Girivanagari. Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Govinda Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Govinda Shri Radhe. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Govinda ki, Shri Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. So before we begin the session, we're just going to start with Om Namo Bhagavate. And today we're reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 6, and Text 5. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The reading from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 6, and Text 5. Atapi yuyam krita kilipshabhavam yeba hisho bhagavajam parado prashadayatvam prashid harishuddha chetasva ipra prasadam prakrivnan giri padmam tatapi yuyam krita kilipshabhavam Yeba hisho bhagavajam paradu prasadyadvam parishuddha cetasa ipra prasadam pragritangari padmam tatapi yuyam krita kilbishabhavam yeba hisho bhagavajam paradu prasad ayadvam parishuddha cetasa Vipra prasadam pragritangari padmam. Anyone? Tapi yuyam kritakil vishabhavam yeba hisho bhagavajam parado prasadayadvam prashido chetasaha Vipra prasadam pragritangari padmam. Anyone else? Tatapi yuyam kritakil vishabhavam Yeba hisho bhagavajam paradu prashadayadvam prashishuddha cetasaha Vipra prasadam paridangara. Atapi yuyam kritakil vishabhavam Yeba hisho bhagavajam paradu prashadayadvam parishuddha cetasaha Vipra prasadam paridangara padma. Transliteration by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Prabhupada Ki. Ata api, still, yuyam, all of you, krita kilbisha, having committed offenses, bhavam, Lord Shiva, ye, all of you, bahisha, of the sacrifice, bhagavajam, entitled to a share, radu, have excluded, prashadayadvam, all of you should satisfy, parishuddha chetasaha, without mental reservations, Shipra prasadam, Quit mercy. Pragrita Angari Padmam, his lotus feet having been taken shelter of. Translation. You have excluded Lord Shiva from taking part in the sacrificial results, and therefore you are all offenders at his lotus feet. Still, if you go without mental reservations and surrender unto him and fall down at his lotus feet, he will be very pleased. Purport. Lord Shiva is also called Ashutosha. Ashu means very soon, and Tosha means to become satisfied. The demigods were advised to go to Lord Shiva and beg his pardon. And because he is very easily pleased, it was certain that their purpose would be served. Lord Brahma knew the mind of Lord Shiva very well, and he was confident that the demigods who were offenders at his lotus feet could mitigate their offenses by going to him and surrendering without reservation. You have excluded Lord Shiva from taking part in the sacrificial results, and therefore you are all offenders at his lotus feet. Still, if you go without mental reservations and surrender unto him and fall down at his lotus feet, he will be very pleased. Om Ajnanatimandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurube Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashachade Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhishya Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you so much. I feel very, very privileged, very grateful to be here and to be speaking in front of every single one of you. This is actually my first Bhagavatam class I'm ever actually giving in a temple room. So I feel very honored and very grateful, and I beg for each one of your mercy and your encouragement, and I beg also for forgiveness for any shortcoming and mistakes that I may make. So we're reading from a very beautiful chapter, the pastime of, in fact, it's a very good particular pastime, Daksha and Lord Shiva, and also, the fate of Mother Sati. And so I was speaking to a devotee yesterday, and we were just kind of discussing where can we go with this. Often what it is that when we're in a discussion forum and we open the Bhagavatam, there's so many things that we can take away from. And so in this particular verse, there are actually many points that can be made. But the point that I want to specifically focus on, because often it is something that we all struggle with in our spiritual and devotional life, is Vaishnav Aparad. Every single one of us at some point in our spiritual life, intentionally or unintentionally, we do things that often may offend other devotees, that may even offend just people in general. So I think it's a topic that we have to really be mindful of, that we have to be conscious of. Otherwise, it is said that no matter how many services we do, how many rounds we chant, whatever we do, it somehow spoils the progress that we're gradually making. So if we just kind of look back on the previous chapter and previous texts, just for kind of an update. So we know that, Lord Shiva learns of, that Mother Sati, left her body, or she quit her body due to the humiliation and the insult that she had received from Daksha. So we can understand that. And as a result of it, when Lord Shiva came to know of this, then he became very infuriated. He became very angry. And I was kind of researching, and it's really interesting how, when Mother Sati actually chose to quit her body, according to Jiva Goswami, he also mentions there that Mother Sati quitting her body can also mean here that she gave up within her heart her relationship with Daksha. And so therefore she chose to quit her body. And Lord Shiva became infuriated, he became angry. But he wasn't angry because of the insult that was directed at him. He was angry because of the insults and the fact that Mother Sati chose to leave her body. So it was actually the insult of the Vaishnava that he became infuriated with, in this instance, Mother Sati. And lastly, because Lord Shiva was infuriated, because Lord Shiva was really angry, in that sense, he created Vibhadra, who he commanded to go and kill all of Daksha and his army. So, and then when the demigods began to run to Lord Brahma to seek shelter, to seek for forgiveness, what did Lord Brahma say? Lord Brahma said that it is better that you go to Lord Shiva with no reservation, no mental reservation, and ask him and beg him. Actually, in fact, it is said, beg him for his forgiveness. Fall at his lotus feet and beg him for his forgiveness. So it's really interesting, just kind of making these 3 points. One thing we can understand is that we should never remain in the association of those that blaspheme devotees. That's one thing. Another thing is that if we are going to be infuriated, if we are going to be angry, it should only be that we're infuriated and angry when we see that the Lord is blasphemed or his devotees are blasphemed. And the last thing is that our entire movement is actually based on this system of parampara, that if we want forgiveness, if we want mercy, if we want blessings, we cannot directly go to the Lord, but we have to go to the Lord's representative, particularly when it comes to forgiveness. Sometimes we may have this mentality that if I commit a sin, if I commit an offense, then I can just go to Krishna, I can go to the deities and I can ask for forgiveness, or I can chant extra few rounds. But in this instance, we actually see that the way to actually receive forgiveness is actually through begging to those that we have actually committed those offenses to, and not utilizing Shastra in order to navigate through that sense of responsibility. So it's a very beautiful verse. And one thing that came to my mind when it comes to this particular verse is that the problem is that when we commit Vaishnav Aparad, just as Daksha did, what we actually do is that we actually cut the mercy. We cut the flow of mercy. Every single one of us, from the moment that we start chanting Hare Krishna, that we take to this process, there is this flow of mercy that is continuously flowing. Jokingly or seriously, the moment that we begin to commit offenses to devotees, what we do is that then we actually cut that mercy. And so therefore, by cutting that mercy, just as Lord Brahma instructed Daksha to go to Lord Shiva, similarly, we have to be able to have a very positive, have a very kind and very sweet relationship with devotees, and to be very sensitive and conscious of our dealings with devotees. And Srila Prabhupada actually mentions in one particular lecture that the Krishna consciousness movement is not for the persons who are envious. It is a movement to train people how to become not envious. It is a first-class scientific movement, yes, not to become envious. And I was actually thinking about this, that every single morning when we chant, Prabhupada's Pranam mantra, there's a particular, the second line, the third line of it, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine. Shunyavadi. This concept of impersonalism runs through the whole Western civilization. We're very impersonal, and we may sometimes think that we're not. I'm coming to the temple, I'm taking darshan of Krishna, I'm chanting Krishna's holy name. I'm following the process. I'm following the process of bhakti. So what is it that is impersonalistic that I'm doing? And often that actually streams and runs through our interaction with devotees. We have this mindset, something that I like to describe as exclusivity to the Lord, without actually including inclusivity to his devotees. We think that it's just a relationship between me and Krishna. It's just a relationship between me, Krishna, and the holy name. That often what it is that we exclude that factor of Vaishnavas, of devotees. Because Krishna says that the devotees are in my heart and I am in the heart of the devotees. So therefore, Krishna is boldly declaring that actually, I'm subservient to my devotees. And so therefore, if anyone wants my mercy, then they have to be able to attain the mercy of my devotees. If anyone wants an attraction, a taste for me, then we have to be able to develop that by having a taste and attraction for Vaishnava association, the right type of Vaishnava association. So you see how impersonalism can even run in our community, within our heart, very subtly, just by our dealings and our interactions with devotees. Again, like I say, jokingly or even intentionally. So therefore, we find here that the demigods, when they've actually committed a great aparad towards a pure devotee like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma is saying that I cannot save you. I cannot help you. Similarly, if we actually look at the pastime, and I'm going to share a little bit more and elaborate this on more, if we look at the whole Bhāgavatam, and even we look at the Chaitanya Charitamrita, whenever a devotee or whenever an individual commits a Vaishnava aparad, and then when they try and directly go to the Lord to seek for forgiveness, we often find that the Lord says, no, you have to go through my devotee. We see that with the pastime of Ambarish. We see that with the pastime of Srivas Thakur. So I'll mention a little bit more about that later on. But it kind of really shows you that this, again, is a system of parampara. It's a system of that, like we have to make our dealings with devotees more personal. We have to make it more genuine. And we have to genuinely care. So therefore, in the Bhāgavatam, it is said, Canto 4, Chapter 14, verse 32, one should not at any time tolerate blasphemy and insults against Lord Vishnu or his devotees. A devotee is generally very humble and meek, and he is reluctant to pick a quarrel with anyone, nor does he envy anyone. However, a pure devotee immediately becomes fiery with anger when he sees that Lord Vishnu or his devotees is insulted. And so I was kind of reflecting that, yes, Trinadapi Sunechena, that yes, we're in this movement and we have to develop a sense of humility. We have to develop a sense of meekness. But often it's so important of two things, that when we see that other devotees that are being offended, it should sprout a feeling of frustration, a feeling of anger, a feeling of dissatisfaction. But I was thinking to go even a little bit further, when we commit an offense to devotees, we should also be that grave to ourselves. There's not that when we just see others that are committing aparad, that, it's like, I'm frustrated, but also how reflective, how introspective, how deep are we in our own personal meditation? How often do we reflect of what is the quality of my interaction with the devotees on a regular day-to-day basis? I don't know, many of you can think of the first time you came to the temple and you saw devotees and you were just so ecstatic. You were so happy, you were so pleased. But over time, familiarity breeds contempt. It's like we kind of develop this friendship. And then often what it is if we're not mindful, if we're not conscious, then Maya can come into our relationship with devotees. And we may do things and say things that often leaves us with losing taste for the holy name. So, I was asking a devotee, why is it that often devotees may be chanting for 20, 30 years, on Sankirtan, doing so many different services, and yet that taste may not necessarily manifest? And there could be many, many factors, and I'm not saying this is the only factor, but one thing that we can do is evaluate what is the quality of my relationship with devotees. Just as we're receiving mercy, simultaneously we're losing mercy. When our relationship with devotees are very stagnant, when it's very not inspiring and not fulfilling. And so then therefore it's important to realize that if our relationship with devotees consistently, just like we see in the pastime of Daksha, if our relationship with devotees, if there is a lot of aparadi going on, then that can actually flow with our relationship with Krishna. It can also flow with our relationship with Guru. Many devotees in the past may have experienced this, that, like sometimes we see that I don't feel as connected, I don't feel as close, I don't feel that relationship is there with my seniors, with my spiritual teacher, even with Krishna. And so therefore, It's a question of evaluating, what am I doing that is causing this to be? It's not just coincidental. It's not accidental. It's something that we have to be very reflective. Srila Prabhupada said that just as karmis are speculative, we have to also be introspective. We have to ask ourselves that this is not just happening for no reason. Why is my relationship with Krishna not there? Or why is that taste for Krishna not there? Why is that taste for the holy name not there? Why is that taste for Sankirtan not there? And what can I do to evaluate that? What can I do to fix that? How can I be of more service? You know, my mentor always told me that service is the language of gratitude. And the way that we can show gratitude to a Krishna is by serving his devotees. So this is, and so Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Vaishnava Ninda, offenses to the devotees, he mentions that there's three things that we can do to try and avoid. And if we avoid these three things, it's so fundamental, it's so important. We do it subtly. You know, this idea, this concept of criticizing, comparing, and competing. So Bhaktivinoda says that we have to avoid criticizing the faults of the devotees that are practicing devotional life. Every single one of us, before we have come to Krishna consciousness, you know, we have had to have our personal challenges to deal with, to navigate through, to overcome. So then therefore, when we see a devotee who's trying hard to purify themselves of their anarthas, that are trying hard to purify themselves of their impurity, instead of being judgmental, we should be encouraging. Instead of pointing the faults, we should try and see what good there is in them. And not only criticizing the faults of devotees, but also criticizing the qualities that they may have that they're struggling with during the period of their practice of devotional life. You know, the thing is, as we progress as we progress and navigate through anartha nivriti, we may find many, many times that we fall back on a certain bad habits. We fall back on certain bad qualities. And instead of holding on to that, you know, there's a saying that if you see someone for who they are, they'll remain the same. But if you see someone for who they can become, then their spiritual life will improve. And so therefore, instead of holding on to that quality that they're struggling with, that over time will eventually burn up, how can we be a source of encouragement? And lastly, a devotee may accidentally do something. But just because they do something accidentally, it doesn't mean that that accident defines who they are. And so these are three things that we can try and avoid. And if we don't avoid these three things, then what it actually does is that it cripples our sadhana. It cripples our bhakti. It cripples our practice. So it's really, really important. And these are the thing is, because Daksha was so much into the gyan, he was so much into the knowledge, rather than also understanding the process of bhakti. So therefore, what it is that we can naturally become proud. We can become arrogant. And then when we become proud, often we may not actually acknowledge, accept, and aspire to gradually move away from our own internal bad qualities. So Srila Prabhupada firmly stated that it does not matter whether a devotee, he's talking about a devotee in this context, it does not matter whether he is born this country or that province or this planet or that planet. Anyone whose life is simply absorbed in Krishna consciousness and thoughts of God, he's a devotee. So we should not blaspheme that our process is better, your process is not. That is due to ignorance. So this is an offense, blaspheme to the devotees. So when we talk about blaspheme, we're not just talking about just, yes, in one context, we're talking about devotees that may be practicing Krishna consciousness, but also what about everyone else that may be practicing some form of process that is ultimately there to try and come closer to Krishna. So when we talk about the fact that, aparad is blocking our experience to get the mercy of Krishna and Srimati Radharani, we're not just talking about like direct devotees, but we're also talking about those that may be in other processes that are sincerely trying to navigate also through their journey to Krishna consciousness gradually. So again, it's this aspect, this idea of impersonalism, that we feel like we think that Krishna exclusively belongs to us and nobody else, and that he can't connect to anyone else's journey, and how that individual may gradually come to Krishna also. So And so in the Bhāgavatam, so we've spoken a little bit about aparad. And we understand that, like I was saying earlier on, that Krishna clearly states that the devotees are in my heart and I am in the heart of the devotee. So therefore we understand that aparad upsets Krishna. He upsets Krishna because in one sense, when we're committing aparad, when we're committing offenses to the devotees, we're hurting Krishna. And so therefore Srila Prabhupada says in the Bhāgavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, Krishna says that the pure devotees is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotees. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. So you can see that Krishna clearly has this very fondness for Vaishnavas. He has this very beautiful, sweet relationship with devotees. And clearly in our own, sometimes it's so important that these are not some abstract thoughts. These are not some abstract kind of discussion that we're having. Similarly, just like in our relationship with someone, if we see that our friend is being offended, we want to intervene. We want to get involved. And sometimes we may even struggle to forgive that person. So similarly, Krishna is the same here. If Krishna's devotees are being blasphemed, then Krishna's like, I can't forgive until you get the mercy from my devotees. So therefore, we can understand that to please Krishna means that we have to serve the devotees. We have to be able to become dear to devotees. And in the Madhurya Kandamini, I was just reading that last yesterday. In the first shower of nectar, we kind of really see and we understand that Krishna is Bhakta Vatsalya. He has this kind of subservient attitude towards his devotees. He's very fond of his devotees. And it's almost like, and he enjoys being controlled by his devotees because bhakti is in their heart. It's always in their heart. And so therefore, how can we develop our own bhakti? How can we develop our own devotional, how can we develop faith? We can develop faith by, really having that sort of engagement with the devotees. Krishna also says in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam that, even, and here's a very interesting one, even Canto 11, Chapter 12, Text 9. Even though one engages with great endeavor in a mystic yoga system, philosophical speculation, charity, vows, penances, ritualistic sacrifices, teachings of Vedic mantras to others, personal studies of the Vedas or the renounced order of life, still one cannot achieve me. After all, this entire process is established on relationship. And I think that's one thing I really wanted to emphasize. This entire process of bhakti, of Krishna consciousness, is really built upon relationship. And that may be hard for those that may be from different walks of life, where, many times by probably society, by our parents, by many individuals, we're taught that we can just directly pray to God, that we can just directly come to God, that we can directly just get the mercy from God, from Krishna. But we can understand that in Krishna consciousness, that's not necessarily the case. And so therefore, how do we come to devotees? How do we come? With a state of humility. And humility is not, this idea of humility is so important because we're brought up in a society, in a civilization where it's all about us. It's all about me, what I want, what I need, what I desire, how close I want to come to Krishna. But think about this. How often have we thought, how can I help someone else come closer to Krishna? So therefore, humility doesn't mean thinking less of ourselves. It means thinking less about ourselves. It means that, thinking more about the devotees and how we can help them to create a spiritual progress, how we can help them to make a spiritual breakthrough. And when we can help them to make a spiritual breakthrough, then we can experience our own spiritual breakthrough. So this idea of humility, we chant it, we pray every single day. That we should be humble like a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree. When devotees it's about seeking for forgiveness, but it's also about the willingness to forgive. When devotees, it works two ways. So therefore, when devotees may commit some sort of a unfavorable action towards us, how can we also position ourselves in a way that we learn to forgive others? Because the more we hold on to the pain that others may be causing us, then the more we're actually blocking the love. The more that we're blocking that ability to be able to taste. And if we look, Krishna is constantly forgiving us. You know, and devotees, if we go to them sincerely and beggingly, they're also forgiving us. So therefore, how can we position ourselves in a way that we're willingly able to forgive also in our own life to others that may cause us unfavorable activity rather than holding on to? So, like I mentioned, the key is humility. So recently I was in DC, and then I went to the iFast Center, and there I was, I had the real great fortune of um, learning a little bit about Bhaktitirtha Swami, and learning a little bit about his interactions and also his lectures and also his dealings, especially when devotees were having conflicts with one another. And it can be very detrimental, but at the same time is something that can also empower us and elevate us. If we develop this idea, this concept of whatever problem that we're experiencing, let us take personal responsibility for it, rather than finding the fault in others and telling ourselves that the reason why I'm experiencing stagnance in my spiritual life, the reason why I cannot avoid committing so much Vaishnava aparad is because people are triggering me. What we can instead ask ourselves, what is the trigger within ourselves that we're allowing to be triggered when people act and behave in a certain way? So therefore, it's this idea of taking personal responsibility. When we can take personal responsibility, then that means we can change our character. It means that we can change our attitude. It means that we can change our behavior, especially in the world that we're living in today, where people always want to shift the problems onto someone else. They want to always shift the problems to something else, someone else or something else. And so then therefore they go into this whole spiral of having a very toxic and negative relationships, very detrimental relationships. So Bhaktitirtha Swami really also emphasizes that we should humble ourselves and we should view our activities with this, with seriousness, and see where am I performing improper activity and how can I change that. So what I want to do is I want to read this beautiful poem that Bhaktitirtha Swami wrote in his book, The Beggar. I was reading this with one devotee yesterday, and I just thought that this is powerful. This is really incredible, because what it is that when we can understand how merciful and how forgiving Srila Prabhupada is, then that naturally melts our heart. And it makes us realize that, Prabhupada came to New York at a time, where there were so many challenges and so many difficulties and so many problems, but yet he was always willing to overlook the shortcomings of those that he were training to be a first-class devotees. He saw the purity, he tried to see the purity in them, and we see as a result of how that came about and how that manifested today in 2025. So I want to read this really beautiful poem, and then perhaps maybe I'll share a little bit of like different pastimes of where we see forgiveness being practiced in the most beautiful way, and how we should allow that to inspire our ability to be able to forgive and also to seek forgiveness. And in that way, the flow of mercy carries on in our devotional practice. So this is chapter 2. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's going to take time, but I'm just going to read. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a context and then kind of take it from there. So therefore, Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, when he writes this particular poem, what he's basically saying is that for many, many, many years, and this is his humility, by the way. This is his humility. This is the beauty of the Vaishnavas, that they're so humble, that they're so simple. So I'm just going to share this, but share it with the right context. So Prabhupada in context, or Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, what in context he's saying is that for many, many years he's been practicing Krishna consciousness, he's been preaching, he's been going over the globe and really cultivating leaders, cultivating devotees, community, building communities, starting up temples. And so that's where, we're going to kind of go from. And then here he says that, so I'm just going to kind of read from that. As I listened to this explanation, all the emptiness, gloom, pain, and depression I had experienced earlier became incredibly intensified. My first reaction was of a total denial. So basically what he was saying, what Bhaktitirtha Swami was saying here, that I wasn't doing this, Krishna, for you. I was doing this for me. Sometimes in our spiritual life here, whether it's kirtan, whether it's given Bhāgavatam, whatever service that we're doing, externally, we're doing that service, but the question is also what mood are we doing it in? What is our attitude? What is the intention? Where is our attention going to? So I would highly recommend in your own time you can read this, but just kind of moving on. As I listened to this explanation, all the emptiness, gloom, pain, and depression I had experienced earlier became incredibly intensified. My first reaction was of that total denial. I wanted to shout and curse at anything that I could, but instead I channeled that intensity inward and recognized that all these remarks were unequivocally true. As soon as I humbly but deeply accepted this full report of my faults, my radical change of consciousness miraculously turned the key. All of a sudden, the same voice that had just moment before heavily chastised me addressed me in the gentlest manner. Now push the gate open with both hands, the voice said. When I did this, I saw the most beautiful spiritual being. And as soon as he spoke, I realized that he was the one I had been hearing. To my surprise, he warmly embraced me, then pulled me away to look deeply into my eyes. His words cut to the core of me. So listen to this part. My child, it was not really your screaming, your crying, or even your change of consciousness that turned the key. It was the prayers of your spiritual master. For decades, your spiritual master has been begging, screaming, and crying to the Supreme Lord on your behalf. Every moment, every second, every minute that we're in this movement, we have to ask ourselves, how can I utilize it effectively to show my appreciation for Prabhupada? How can I help people on the journey of my spiritual life? Jayananda Prabhu was also a very beautiful example of this. Sometimes what it is that within Vaishnav community, there may be disagreement. There may be dispute. And sometimes in the process of it, people may feel like that they want to distance themselves from devotees. And in this particular case scenario, there was one particular devotee that he decided that he no longer wants to be part of the community. And as a result of it, he gave up everything and he decided to work in a butcher shop to make money, to make income, to live. And so Jayananda Prabhu, when he found out about this devotee and his situation, he felt this great, great pain. He felt this great hurt. And that's what genuine humility means. Genuine compassion means that we have compassion for the spirit of that person. That after many, many, many years of wandering the universe, finally they've come into contact with Krishna consciousness. They've come into contact with the chanting of the holy name. And now it is most unfortunate that the fact that, for some reason or another, that they've chosen to leave. And so Jayananda Prabhu, his heart was so much pain that he decided that I'm going to look for this devotee. And he started wandering around the streets. I think this was in the US, San Francisco, I'm not sure. But he started wandering around the street and then he eventually found this shop. And when he went inside the shop, and then he went to the back of the shop, he found this devotee carrying a knife and slaughtering these, dead animals. And so, sometimes in it's like when we see a devotee committing an offense, we think to ourselves, oh my God, like what's wrong with this devotee? Why is he acting this way? Why is he behaving this way? Why is he speaking? We get judgmental. We get critical. It's like we're just so ready and quick to always see the problems. But Jayananda Prabhu ran to this devotee and embraced him, even though that there was blood all over him and he was carrying a knife. He embraced him, he hugged him, and he said that I'm so happy to see you. And this completely melted the heart of this devotee. And from there onwards, because of that beautiful act, because of that loving exchange, he left the knife and he decided to join the ashram again. So do you see that every single day we have an option? We have a choice to get judgmental and critical, and in that way, actually become an obstruction for people's devotional life, and also cut the flow of mercy in our own life. Or we have the opportunity to inspire people, to come closer to Krishna through our own Vaishnav etiquette, our own conduct, our own behavior, our own appreciation and love and devotion to serving the devotees. So therefore, it's really, really important. We see this time after time. We see with Haridas Thakur being whipped in so many marketplaces. And when the Lord became infuriated, was he thinking about, okay, go and make them suffer? No. Dear Lord, deliver them. Because often what it is that we don't see the invisible behind the visible interactions of our life. We don't see that, okay, devotees may act in irrational way, but what is the cause? What is the pain? There was a particular story that I heard of where, this was during the time of the concentration camp. And all these Jewish, they were, brought inside this concentration camp and they were gassed. And then these soldiers, what had happened is that when they went inside this concentration camp, they were looking at all these dead bodies. And amongst these dead bodies, there was one particular woman that passed away. And then she had a note hanged to her wrist. And then when this soldier opened the note, what he had actually read in the note is that, please God, we're about to die right now. We're about to be gassed right now. But when it comes to judging the fate of these soldiers, these people, just also think about the fact that this may be an unfortunate situation, but there was a beautiful fortune that came out of it. And that beautiful fortune is that we, as Jewish, we as people have been able to come closer together. We have been able to bond more deeply. We've been able to appreciate our last moment. So do you see that even in hard times, even when devotees may cause us unfavorable activities, we can ask ourselves, how can I grow from this? How can I deepen my bhakti in this? How can I practice tolerance and patience? But also, what is the suffering that this devotee must be going through for him to be behaving or for her to be behaving the way that they are? We just see the physical, we see just with our eyes, but we don't see through scriptures. We don't see through Shastra. We don't see what is going on behind everybody's life. And so therefore, we have to also be conscious of that before we choose to make any decisions, before we choose to hold on to any suffering that others may have caused us. And when we cause suffering to others, we should be eager and enthusiastic to go in a mood of seeking for forgiveness and not to do that again. So, and lastly, I will leave with one thing that Srila Prabhupada said in 1970, September 21st in Calcutta. He said, our ISKCON should be taken as being family based upon love and trust. So as the father becomes unhappy when one of his children wishes to break family connections, I also become unhappy when there is difficulties within our ISKCON family. So please do not consider leaving as your spiritual children of mine, but instead, see how you can deal with this. See how you can actually address the issue and grow together and serve together more lovingly, more deeply, especially in the society where we live in today, where relationship is the biggest problem we face. So these are just some few thoughts. Just to conclude that Vaishnavas are very forgiving. They're very compassionate. So, and we've kind of shared a little bit of history of different personalities that were criticized, that were abused, but they were willing to forgive. Even Srila Prabhupada himself, when devotees were falling away from the movement, he was crying. And he was like, please come back. So therefore, we should be willing to forgive. And when we make mistakes, we should be eager to seek for forgiveness. And in that way, we can actually save ourselves from cutting the flow of mercy and forgiveness. With that being said, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions.
You're such a great speaker, so I hope you continue giving many classes. And I don't have a question, just wanted to share that appreciation. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. It's all by the mercy and encouragement of the devotees, so I'm very grateful. It's a very beautiful topic, very practical.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class. I'm really honored as well to be in your first Bhagavatam class. I have a question. You were talking about how we can learn how to be compassionate with Vaishnavas, and as Prabhupada, he gets sad when we don't find a way to get along. But how about the people that just come to the temple for the first time and they're not really they're unsure of the environment or trying to like develop that Krishna consciousness? How can we be compassionate to beginners?
That's a beautiful question. How can we be compassionate to beginners? One thing, like when Srila Prabhupada first came to New York, he demonstrated through his own character, his own personality, and his own life. In that one of the first houses, it was called Sandy, and her husband, is that he was just very kind person. He would listen if there were any problems, and he wasn't like intentionally like, I've got to give Bhagavatam, I've got to give Bhagavad Gita. He was just being an amazing listener. And later on, when Sandy was sharing her reflection, she said, yeah, that Prabhupada was just a perfect gentleman, that he was just part of the family, that he was just always willing to listen. At no point was he trying to preach his message, but rather he preached his message through his action. And I think what it is that when people come here for the first time, we can practice compassion through our character. We're so quick to give people the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. We're so quick to preach to them about Krishna. But what it is that we have to understand where people are at, what they need, and how can we give that. And if we actually look at it, most times people just want relationship. They just want someone genuine in their life to be able to listen to them. Someone, there's a saying that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When there is a sense of care, when there is this sense of concern, then people will genuinely listen to you and they will listen to what your message has to be. So I think we can practice compassion through being patient with individuals. Like sometimes people may come to the temple and they may do things that for us is wrong, but for them, they've never been to the temple. They may, I don't know. We've seen it many times in temples. People just may do things. And so it's easy to get very infuriated with that. It's like, oh, why is he doing that? Why is she doing that? But we have to be less judgmental and more compassionate. And that means they're like really understanding that people are at a certain level. Let me connect with them heart to heart. Our entire movement is established on heart to heart, not on business to business. Not that, that this is just an exchange that I want your money and you give, and I give you Bhagavatam. No. So there's the book Bhagavat and then there's the person Bhagavat. So I would say that we have to genuinely be invested. We have to really put our heart into what we do. That means genuinely listening. There's a saying that if you take the word heart and you take the H and the T away, you get ears. So therefore, by listening, then you can understand the genuine feeling and the genuine concern of an individual. So you have to listen. You have to hear. I would say that. That is the best compassion that we can practice. Hearing from people, sitting down with them somewhere in a corner or in a reception, whatever, and just listen to them. What are you going through? What do you need? How can I serve you? How can I help you? Not that I have the highest philosophy and I'm just going to wham it on you.
I also wanted to comment, and I've been reading the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, and one of the chapters is the chapter title is "How May I Serve You?" And what made Prabhupada like in the book, they talk about how he never asks his guru questions. He always listened. And one of his only questions was, how may I serve you? So I just thought that when you said that.
Prabhupada was always serving the devotees. Even in the early days when he came to New York, what did he do? He was cooking for the devotees. He was serving the devotees. He was cleaning after the devotees. And it's these acts that melts the heart. It's these acts that makes one, here's something I really want to share, which is important. It's these acts that inspires people to want to devote their life to Krishna consciousness. So when we think about that, we need more support, we need more help, we need more people to serve the mission. How do we do that? We serve. We serve those that serve the mission. So when we serve those that serve the mission, then they're the ones that are going to make this mission grow. So we have to be servant. We have to be servant leaders.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the brilliant class. My question was, we hear that compassion is more of a function of love of God in one's heart. So how do we really practice compassion, especially when most of our activities are motivated by something in return? So how do we practically practice that compassion?
It's like so much of our action is often motivated that I want to come closer to Krishna, that I want to do this, I want to do that. My mentor mentioned something so beautiful, that we have to practice compassion in times where people don't see us. It's like And it's just simple things. It's basic things that we can do behind the scene that then will inspire when compassion comes to in a bigger scale. So practically speaking, like I gave one suggestion, is that taking the time in our day to listen to people, taking our time to understand what the individual need is, and the greatest form of compassion is hearing the need of people and seeing that how we can connect that in relation to Krishna. I would say that, there's I think Jadvaita Maharaj mentioned about this concept of material compassion, then there's a spiritual compassion. And so spiritual compassion is understanding what is the difficulty, what is the challenge in one's life. Ultimately, we understand it's because they're looking for relationship. And in a very loving way, in a very sensitive way. Not that we tell people that you're not the body, you're the soul, but in a very sensitive way, in a very in a way that they can digest. How can we connect whatever struggle that they're going through with the struggle of that they're internally experiencing? But I think it takes time. I think it takes what it is that we can practice compassion by genuinely taking the time to sit down, realize how fortunate we are, and try and feel the suffering of others. That's what we can do. If we're very fortunate, we're here in the temple, we have association, we take prasadam, and sometimes our biggest struggle may just be oh, I don't like this particular prasadam. Our biggest struggle may be who took my shoes? Or these kind of stuff. But in the world that we're living in, there are genuine people that are going through genuine suffering, far greater than whatever struggle that we may be going through. So compassion means genuinely feeling the suffering of someone else, and then appreciating that we, by Krishna's mercy and by the mercy of our spiritual teacher, we've been given the fortune to be able to alleviate people's suffering, and we have to be serious. We have to be serious about our own practice. And only when we can be serious about our own practice, then we can help others. But I would say that I think often, I try and do this more often than before. Often we don't pause to think the suffering that the world's going through as much as we can be doing. And not in a way to depress ourselves, but in a way to inspire ourselves. That, oh my God, time is ticking. This is of an urgent situation. So then therefore, as difficult as it is that how can I be more conscious of what I say, what I do, what I read, what I hear, and how I live and act and behave in my life. I would say that just take the time to really connect with what's going on in the world, but not in a way that depresses you, but in a way that makes you realize that, we're in a very fortunate position.
It's mentioned if somebody makes an offense, they can fall at the feet of the person they offended. But now what happens if someone makes an offense and that person passes away? How do they recover from that?
This was a question I asked many, many times. It is a very good question that when we commit an offense, if someone is alive, we can ask for forgiveness. But if someone passes away, it's an unfortunate event. And in that situation, we shouldn't lose hope. We shouldn't lose faith. We shouldn't lose hope. We shouldn't think that, okay, this person's passed away, that I'll never be forgiven. But we just have to be very sincere. We have to be very deep, very sincere, and really pray from our heart that Krishna, that I genuinely wanted to. And Krishna is a very understanding person. Krishna is not the way that we're taught, perhaps maybe in many other places in the world where it's it's black and white. It's either that he forgives or he doesn't forgive. He also takes situations into consideration, and then he takes everything into the picture. And so therefore, if we cannot directly seek for forgiveness from a devotee or from a person because we've caused an offense, it basically simply means that we have to be very sincere. We have to really beg to Krishna that, Krishna, I really wanted to seek forgiveness from this person, but unfortunately I can't. Please, Krishna, help me. And Krishna is understanding. Krishna tries to look what's in the heart of an individual. And so we have to do that. We have to just have this very private, very deep, and very honest conversation with Krishna in our heart. I can't ask for forgiveness, but please, Krishna, chant and do service and just beg to Krishna that that you're able to be forgiven. Krishna is amazing. He takes everything into consideration.
Would that still apply if you have no contact with the person you offended?
If you don't have, so that means that somehow you can't get into contact with them because you don't know where their number is, where they live, and stuff like that. Similarly, yeah, like I said, and this is what we have to realize, just like we are individuals, Krishna is also an individual. So if you're really in a position, and we've heard stories in the past where there's been a dispute between devotees, and then years, and these devotees have lost touch with each other. Years and years and years and years, they come together. So what it is that if we're sincere, if we're genuine, if we're seeking for forgiveness and we're begging, it may just be in the future that we may cross paths with them, if we're ready. And if it doesn't happen, again, Krishna just takes everything into consideration. In Kali Yuga, nobody's relationship is perfect. We've all come with baggage. We've all had difficulties with relationships. But we try. We try our best. We try and learn from that. And we try and implement what we've learned from the past into the present. And in that way, Krishna sees, oh wow, this person is genuinely trying hard. For some reason or another, they may be not able to be in contact with this particular person, or this person may have passed away, but they're genuinely trying hard. So let me give them a chance. It's beautiful. It's a very beautiful philosophy. It's a very beautiful way that Krishna works and navigates. And we have to have faith. But as Prabhupada said, our problem is that when we come to Krishna for forgiveness, we think he can't forgive because we're just too sinful. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj says that. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj says that one way that we're trying to play God in this world is that we either think too high of ourselves or we think too low of ourselves. One way that we want to be in the center is that we think that we're too high or we think we're too low. In either way, it's all about us. Either we're too good or we're just not good enough. But Prabhupada says that, like when someone said that I am nothing, it's like, no, Prabhupada said, that's not true. I am the most fallen. No, you are the most nothing. So therefore, yes, Krishna works in a magnanimous way. And we just have to have faith in the process and in his ability to be able to work magic in our life. I think that's about it. Thank you so much. Antara Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Śrila Prabhupada ki, Nikai Gaur Kamanande. Hare Krishna.